In the year 1325, what we now know as Italy was not yet a single, unified country. If you had looked at a map at that time, you would have seen dozens of small and fragmented city-states, each governing itself, raising its own army, and choosing its own enemies. And almost all of them were in conflict with one another. Bologna and Modena were two of those cities. The distance between them was not great, but the difference between them could not be measured in kilometers alone. Politically, they belonged to entirely different worlds. Bologna stood on the side of the Pope, while Modena aligned itself with the Holy Roman Empire. This was not merely a preference. It was a choice of allegiance. And in that time, choosing a side did not only determine who you lived with, it determined who you might die with. For years, there had been small but persistent conflicts between the two cities. Border violations, raids on farmland, warehouses set on fire. These had become routine. No one truly wanted a full-scale war, but neither side was willing to step back. The tension was always there, waiting for the moment it would finally break. On the side of Modena, the leader in power was known for his harshness. He made decisions quickly and never retreated. For him, the matter was not only about land. Reputation was just as important. In Bologna, the situation was somewhat different. The city was more populous and wealthier, but that wealth had brought with it a certain comfort. People were aware of their strength, and at times, that confidence turned into carelessness. Both cities underestimated each other, and that is the most dangerous condition of all, because an underestimated enemy strikes when it is least expected. That summer, the tension grew even stronger. Small clashes increased. Military movement along the border became more frequent. Both sides could feel that something was approaching, but no one wanted to be the one to take the first step, because the first step begins a war. And once war begins, no one knows where it will end. And then, at that very moment, something so small that no one would have taken it seriously brought that long period of waiting to an end. Not an order from a king, not a grand military strategy, not even a political decision, just a simple choice made by a few soldiers. But sometimes, history does not change because of great plans. It changes because of small mistakes. The night was calm. After the crowded hours of the day, the streets of Bologna had slowly emptied. The wells near the center of the city were places no one visited at night, except for the guards on duty. Doors were closed. The walls felt secure. At least, that is what people believed. On that night, a small group of soldiers from Modena quietly set out. This was not an official operation. It was neither part of a grand strategy nor an order given by commanders. It was more like a challenge. Perhaps they wanted to prove themselves, or perhaps they simply wanted to mock the enemy. As they approached the city, they did not speak. They knew the weak points of the walls. They knew the timing of the guard shifts. And most importantly, they knew that no one expected something like this. They entered, silently. After some time, they reached the center of the city. That alone was already an achievement. But in that moment, they did not fully consider what it meant, because their goal was not something great. They only wanted to go a little further. When they arrived at the well, they stopped. After the long walk, they were thirsty. One of them lowered the bucket. The sound of water echoed in the quiet of the night. The bucket was pulled back up. They drank, one after another. Everything could have ended there. They could have left as quietly as they had come. By morning, no one would have even known what had happened. But at that exact moment, one of them looked at the bucket. He paused for a second. Then, half joking and half serious, he said, "Let's take this too." No one answered immediately, but no one said, "We don't need it either." Some decisions are not debated. They are simply accepted. The bucket was not heavy. It was not valuable. But in that moment, to them, it was more than an object. It was a mark, a message, and perhaps an insult. They took the bucket. When they left the city, they still had no idea what it would lead to. For them, it was just a small victory, perhaps a story they would tell their friends in the morning. But in Bologna, the morning was different. Those who came to the well were the first to notice. The bucket was gone. At first, it was ignored. Then it was checked again. And then, it was understood. Someone had entered the city, reached its center, and no one had noticed. This was not the loss of an object. This was a violation. The news quickly reached the authorities. As the events were explained, the matter escalated immediately, because this was not just a bucket. It was a message that said, "Nothing is protecting you." Envoys were prepared. They were sent to Modena. The message was clear. The bucket would be returned. This was not a request. It was an expectation. Days later, the response arrived. Short, clear, and irreversible. No, that single word did not start the war, but it did nothing to stop what was already ready to begin. Because now, it was no longer about the bucket. It was about stepping back, and neither side was willing to do that. After the response arrived, events began to move quickly. In Bologna, there was nothing left to debate. The bucket had not been returned. This was seen as a direct challenge. Preparations began almost immediately. Soldiers were gathered. Weapons were readied. Their numbers were large. And numbers often bring confidence. An army of approximately 30,000 men was assembled. Facing them was a much smaller force. The Modena side had been able to gather only around 7,000 soldiers. Looking at the numbers alone, the outcome seemed obvious. At least, that is what Bologna believed. On November 15th, 1325, the two armies faced each other on the plain of Zappolino. The army of Bologna spread across a wide area. The confidence that came from their numerical superiority was clearly visible. Their formation was loose. The commanders were in no hurry, because they believed this battle would not be difficult. On the side of Modena, however, the situation was very different. They were fewer in number, and because of that, they waited. As the sun slowly began to lower, the balance of the battlefield started to shift. The light fell directly into the eyes of the Bologna soldiers, making it harder for them to see. What seemed like a small detail began to matter. The commander of Modena chose that exact moment. He stopped waiting. The army moved into a tight formation and launched a sudden attack. They were fast. They moved as one. Their objective was clear. In front of them stood a crowd that was unprepared. The first clash was brief. What followed unfolded even faster. Before they fully understood what was happening, the soldiers of Bologna began to retreat. That retreat quickly turned into panic. Their numerical advantage became a disadvantage. The crowd turned into an obstacle. Men pushed against each other, and all order collapsed. The retreat became a flight. The soldiers of Modena did not try to stop them. They simply followed. The battlefield emptied in a short time, and all that remained was the result. Thousands of men had died. The exact number was debated, but the loss was undeniable, and the cause of it all traced back to something no one had taken seriously at the beginning: a bucket. After the battle, the army of Modena did not enter Bologna. They did not attempt to capture the city. Instead, they stopped in front of the city walls, and they celebrated. This was less a victory and more a message. It was not difficult to defeat you. And the bucket? It remained in Modena. It was preserved, just as it had been taken. Over time, it became a memory, but not an ordinary one. It became the symbol of a war, of thousands of deaths, and of a decision that was never taken back. Years later, some historians argued that the true cause of the war was not the bucket at all. They claimed that the real issue lay in much older conflicts, and that the bucket was merely an excuse. Perhaps they were right, but the outcome did not change. An object was taken. A city refused to accept it. A response was given, and there was no return. Sometimes, history is not shaped by great decisions, but by small moments that no one takes seriously. And when that moment arrives, no one truly understands what it will become.